Hi, I'm T.W. Smith. Today we're going to talk about Tai Chi, the chain of command, a physical interpretation of some classical writing. In this segment, we're going to look into how I physically interpret references to the chain of command. It is a tradition in our Kung Fu line to require a physical interpretation of much of the classical writing. It's also somewhat appreciated to be philosophically able to interpret the work, but we don't want to walk around trying to be a lot of words and no iron behind it. There's some classical excerpts that we're going to point at here. The 1881 volume attributed to Wang Zhongyu, where he writes, "Although your body moves, your mind should be quiet. Energy must gather, and spirit should be at ease. Your mind makes the command, and the energy is your signal flag, and your body is the army. Do not neglect any of the 13 dynamics. Long boxing, their command coming from your lower back." There's also the 1875 volume by Yang Ban-ho. "My adaptations can catch the smallest change, and I can distinguish between all measurements. Rotating my waist, the great flag is waved. My mind sends the command, the energy carries the directing banners, and I naturally moved with facility. My whole body is activated like a toughened warrior." Then lastly, there was one other Wang Zhongyu comment, is that if he puts pressure on my right side, I empty my right side and my left goes forth. The energy like a wheel. Your whole body should be coordinated. If there is a lack of coordination anywhere, your body will then be disorganized and you will not have the power you want. Seek for the problem in your hips. First your mind to command your body. It was always amazing to me how much detail they have without a whole bunch of Western science as we know about it. What is this chain of command? The story that was an example for the chain of command is where a general sat up on a hill watching his army at battle. Whenever he wanted to change the tactics and send those orders, they would wave a flag or shoot a flag up a pole of different colors, so it would carry the message out to the command in the field that they refer to as the field major. The field major would then give the orders to his captains, down the lieutenants, down to the privates to carry out this order. In a physical interpretation of it, of course, like we said, the shin, your psyche, your awareness, is the general. This nerve impulse called chi, in this case, would be the energy that is going down to the body to tell the field major, the waist, the core, what to do, who then tells captains hips and shoulders, one at a time, all four of them, to command their subordinates, elbows and knees. Then that also send the commands out to hands and feet, the mere privates. What happens a lot of times in the violation of chain of command, we try to communicate directly to our hands. And that is something, of course, in our culture today, since so much of our life is spent around texting, typing, we forget that there's a whole chain of command in daily life, and we will bypass it. So that when we are interpreting the chain of command, we have a story that goes with it, we can physically point to places, and then we can physically represent that in the style of Tai Chi Chuan as the power comes from the earth, through the legs, guided by the waist, and expressed by the arms. That would be in a way of trying to get the field major involved, coordinating everything from the inside out. And we try to do that in everything that we do through the forms, and then also we try to practice that also in our applications to make it come to life. We want to be able to find the field major and use it. We want to be able to interpret these things physiologically as well. At the time these were written in the mid-1800s, the discovery of the neural impulses had not happened. That doesn't happen until another 70 years later in 1930. Your spirit is the general. Usually the Chinese word for spirit is multidimensional. It's a character that is usually referred to as Shin. It's often translated as spirit into English, but can be interpreted from everything as the spirit that watches over the mountains, or religious connotations, or the human psyche, the agency of self that can see its own potential. The chain of command for the three movements of the center line and the 8 expressions of all actions are to ultimately follow this chain of command that we're discussing. I translate waist as core, the waist and lower back together. If not careful, many people will think of the waist simply as the abdominal region. We want to look at some techniques that have physical examples, perhaps like how do you make a step from bow stance to bow stance in Tai Chi and follow the chain of command, one step at a time. As far as the Tai Chi goes, what type of chain of command does it usually use in order for you to move, for example, to a set of form in the beginning phases? Later on that will change a little bit when you do the martial applications. The chain of command will consolidate it so that you can move faster. But in the beginning, for me it was always a matter of thinking like an F-14 fighter pilot. Wheels check, flaps check, right? You go through a list of things so that you'll know that you've got them complete. One thing we'll do is look at the chain of command for stepping. So in the chain of command of stepping, if we're walking a bow stance, we generally will have our weight on one leg more so than the other. All right, say 70, 30, 60, 40. And we transfer that and change the weight distribution. Once this is more unloaded, it's easier to pick up and turn. Notice that when we talk about just the chain of command, the right hip tells the thigh or the knee to turn. I don't just do what some people do, which is literally almost just keep their foot on the floor and jack your foot out, or try to do it from the ankle bone. Okay? When you do it properly, you'll feel your inner thigh rotate the hip. So when you take the Tai Chi, you open up that hip. The hip tells the knee tells the foot. Not the other way around. You don't go, oh yeah, and then try to turn the hip. Turn it in, transfer your weight to it. So once this is transferred, my field major moves forward. Did you see that? The waist advanced over it. So now once it's over it, it frees the left hip to follow the next command, which is to advance. Notice I could put it anywhere. But since we're doing a form in a straight line usually, so we don't run over each other, I advance it to the front. Now, I don't just slap it down like a steak, okay? Which you can hear people do sometimes, right? When we're practicing. What I do is I advance, and it follows a chain of command. So it'll go, okay, advance, heel of the foot, ball of the foot, bend the forward knee, one notch, then advance your body 1 inch, turn your waist as you continue to advance. That's the completion of one step in Tai Chi. Just one. Let's count those out. So if I'm here, step 1, withdraw the weight, free the leg. Step 2, left hip, in this case, rotate out, which takes the knee and foot with it. Step 3, field measure, move forward, advance over the top of the troop. Now the weight's there. Once that weight is there, I will feel comfortable about advance right leg, heel, ball the foot down, bend the front knee. Notice the front knee bends, but I didn't move my weight. That's where y'all been struggling, right? By the time your foot goes down, everything else has already fell forward, right? I bend the front knee, advance my weight 1 inch. Then as the rest of it advances, I turn my waist with it so that it all finishes together. Step 2. Okay? And as some of you have noticed, the more advanced these get, the more certain you have to be on this. So that chain of command of learning how to get a hold of your communicating to, for example, right shoulder, as you were doing this the other day, advance. As I start to advance out, I call on the left hip to push everything forward, and the left shoulder. Now once it's set, then I advance 1 inch, rotate, and continue advancing. And finish this together. All right. Breaking the chain of command leads to disorganization and problems. Tai Chi is a serial movement, which means once it's disorganized, it's really hard to put it back together again. It's a sequence of discrete movements that flow in coordination, following the chain of command to express your intention. Thank you so much for joining me, and look for more in the interpretation of the classics.